All right, we're back with the end of the lesson here. It's Mr. Aiken again. So we've talked now about the causes M, A, I, and N. We've talked about the spark, that assassination of Franz Ferdinand and the domino effect. And now you've read about trench warfare and total war and kind of the overall scope of this First World War. So now let's talk about how it ended. Yeah, great. Isn't that awesome that we have to do this all in one lesson? We're doing our best here. So the end of the war. Let's look at this PowerPoint. So, as you read in chapter 26, section 2, trench warfare is pretty much called a stalemate. That means that for pretty much most of this war, it lasts from 1914 to 1918. For most of that time, for the first 3 years, there's pretty much no movement. That means both sides are dug into their trenches, one on one side, one on the other. They're fighting back and forth. Both sides are taking heavy, heavy losses, lots of loss of life, and no one's winning, right? Like there are sections of these battle lines where they don't even move more than a mile in this 3 years. Now, at this point, it's been 3 years of fighting, and they're both struggling in pretty much every capacity, right? Money, food, and soldiers are a huge problem because people are still dying. There are high death rates, both from the actual fighting, bullets and shells and things like that, but also disease is running rampant amongst a lot of these people. And so both sides are starting to get rather weak. So for this war to end, one side's going to need to gain an advantage, and we'll take a look and see what that advantage is going to be. The big turning point here, really, that's going to help bring this war to an end is going to be in 1917. The United States is going to decide to join the war. Now, up until that point, the United States had a clear decision that they said they were not going to join this war. They said this is a European war, right? We live in North America. This is Europeans fighting each other. We don't need to get involved just yet. But unfortunately, the United States is going to kind of be forced to join. And it's really because Germany makes a couple of mistakes that's going to kind of put the United States against them. Now, the first one is the sinking of a ship called the Lusitania. So the Lusitania, for lack of a better comparison, think of it as like a Titanic type ship, right? It's this massive, massive passenger cruise ship. And it was sailing in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, Germany had made it clear that they were going to be using their submarines, which were called U-boats, to sink any ships that they saw in the Atlantic Ocean that they thought would possibly be aiding the British Empire. We know the British are an island, so boats are the easiest way to get in and out of that. And so the Germans were trying to kind of cut off Great Britain from their supplies. And so they started to sink any ships, and that included passenger ships such as the Lusitania. So in 1915, the Germans sunk this ship, and it had 120 Americans on board. So despite the fact that it was in the Atlantic and it was sailing around Europe, it did have Americans on board. And so this isn't going to exactly push the United States into the war, but it is going to make us a little angry, right? We're going to see that the American public says, wait a minute, we get that this is a European war, but 120 people just died at the hands of a German ship. Are we going to just kind of stand by and let that happen? And so the United States is kind of battling with those thoughts. The big mistake, though, that Germany is going to make, the main kind of reason that the United States is pushed into the war, is something called the Zimmermann Note. Now, this is as much of a spy novel as you can get, right? Germany tried to send a secret message to Mexico. And essentially what Germany was saying is they were concerned that the United States would join the war eventually, and therefore it would be bad for them because they would probably declare war on Germany. And so Germany says to Mexico, hey, Mexico, if you want to help us out here, you want to do us a solid, could you attack the United States for us and pretty much keep them busy, right? If you could, can you start a war over in North America against the United States so that the United States can't come fight us? If you do, when our war ends, we'll send aid to help you out, and that will help you defeat the United States, and you will get some United States as a reward. So we'll give you like Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and all those states along the border there. And they essentially send this to Mexico as a deal. Unfortunately for the Germans, that message does not make it, and it is actually intercepted by the British. And so the British can have this golden ticket now. They say, hey, United States, look what Germany's trying to do. They are trying to pit Mexico against you. Looks like you're going to join the war on our side. Isn't that right? In the United States, yeah, we can't let Germany kind of get away with this. We can't let them kind of push for war on our own turf. And so the United States joins the war. There's this massive surge of fresh soldiers that haven't been dealing with trench warfare for 3 years, that haven't been dealing with food supply issues for 3 years. And so with the United States joining the war in 1917, it's going to help bring it to a close. And so eventually the Allied powers, the US, Britain, and France, are going to be able to overcome the Central Powers of Germany and its allies. And so on November 11th, 1918, World War I officially comes to an end with Germany defeated. Yay, the war is over, right? Now we can go back to normal. Sort of. Unfortunately, I can keep saying unfortunately, right? We have to wrap things up. When you end a war, you need to have treaties be signed. You need to say this is what's going to happen in the post-war world. So how they're going to do this is through something called the Treaty of Versailles. The winning nations get together to construct a treaty on basically what to do with Europe. Most of Europe has been destroyed by this war, right? Constant warfare over people's houses and things like that. And the cities are in rubble. And we need to decide how we're going to fix those things, how we're going to divide up Europe, right? Where are the borders going to be drawn? The winners want to get something, right? They want to have the war be worth it. But most importantly, these countries are going to be pretty set on punishing, quote unquote, Germany for starting this war. Now, earlier I had asked you, is there a single country or person you can blame for starting this war? And so next week, we're going to talk about whether this treaty is fair, what the effects are going to be, and what direction that's going to push Germany and the rest of the world into. And eventually, we'll get another world war out of it.